Hi, and welcome back to Guff Stuff Weekly Podcast. I'm Javan, and I am
And I'm,
joined today by Connor.
hey everyone, good to be back.
We are doing part 4 on fighting games. Yes, the fourth installment. We mentioned last time we were going to talk about the fight game community and the tournament scene in episode 4, but I think we're actually going to talk about arena fighters and platform fighters after discussing it with Connor before we're recording. So let's dive right in. What is an arena fighter and what is a platform fighter? Let's start with arena fighters.
Okay. So an arena fighter is basically you have two people in an arena that fight each other. Pretty apt name, right?
Yeah.
But what makes and you're allowed to move in 3D space, a lot like a 3D fighter. But what makes them different is entirely the camera location. In a 3D fighter, the camera is fixed on a 2D plane and follows the two motions in it, the two players moving in and out of the foreground. But you're always locked on an axis with each other. You're always looking at each other,
Right.
basically,
Okay.
or on the same line in 2D space. It's probably the best way of putting that. With an arena fighter, the camera can be positioned over one player's shoulder, and you have free range of motion around the arena. So you can turn to face, you can run towards a corner, independent of whatever your opponent is doing. Like a good example of an arena fighter is like Saint Seiya has a really popular arena fighter in South America, and L.A.G.S, the guys who do Guilty Gear, actually put out a Kill the Kill arena fighter, which is the only one I've spent any real time in. And they tend to be a lot of fun to watch, but the minute you get into high level play, you start to lose me because it turns into a lot of zoning. But you can see just some of the most crazy one-sided games in arena fighters. They're a lot of fun. Oh, I would be remiss if I did not mention Gundam. There's a Gundam series called, I think it's Maxi Boost is the latest name, and it is the most popular arcade game in Japan and has been for a long time. It's really neat. How it works is it's 2v2, and each person gets an entire cabinet to themselves, and they are all linked together. So you have your own screen, a teammate next to you with their own screen, and two guys on the other side that have their own screens as well. Or in Japan, they'll network it. So you could be fighting two people in another arcade.
Interesting. So
Yeah,
that's kind of cool.
it's wild. And in this version, this kind of breaks the rules that I just put out. You have your own camera because you have your own screen and own controller, but it's still an arena fighter because you're still not locked onto a 2D axis and you're still moving around an arena, so to speak, in 3D space, independent of wherever your opponent is facing. And they are some. If you're a fan of mech, a fan of Gundam, it is some of the hypest stuff to watch. Every single fighting game major I've ever been to, there's a group of about 30, 40 people. So they organize a tournament. They play 2v2 for the whole weekend. At Combo Breaker in 2021, which Combo Breaker is the second largest tournament in North America. They set up 4 PS4s in the lobby, and they just played Gundam in the lobby of the hotel venue for 3 days straight. And anybody could walk up and just start playing, and they teach you anything you wanted to know. It was a lot of community coming out of that.
what game was this one now?
God, the full title is like Gundam versus Maxi Boost On, I think. Um, we got I think we got one version behind the current version released for PS4, but the current version is only on arcade hardware and released in Japan.
So what's available on
But
PC then for arena fighters?
I think it's the outdated version, the Maxi Boost on 1 or something like that. For arena fighters in general, you also have Kill la Kill IF, which I can recommend. I believe the Saint Seiya arena fighter is there as well. There was also a JoJo's Bizarre Adventure arena fighter for a little bit.
Is there a Persona one cool as well?
The Persona one is actually a proper 2D fighting game. It is a 2D anime fighting game, and it is some of the wildest shit.
Okay.
Yeah, that's Persona 4 Arena Ultimax, which
Okay.
is a mouthful.
As are most of the fight game titles, as I've noticed. Or not most of them, but a lot of them.
Especially the anime fighting games.
Yeah. Xrd Revelator 3rd or whatever it is. Like,
Guilty Gear Xrd Revelator 2.
yeah.
And the funny thing about the Guilty Gear titles is that's not new. In the early 2000s, they re-released Guilty Gear 2. Well, not 2 because Guilty Gear 2 is a tower defense game on the PS2, but Guilty Gear XX is what it was called.
Okay.
Which is why it's Xrd, because you can't put XXX for the third mainline
okay.
fighting game
Gotcha.
series. But they had like 4 or 5 versions of XX, and starting with like Midnight Carnival and going through a bunch of names, and the final version, which is out on PC and a lot of fun with good netcode, is Guilty Gear Accent Core Plus R.
Just absolutely ass.
Or Guilty Gear XX Accent Core Plus R. Yeah, you just call it Plus R.
So are there any, other than like spatial movement, is there anything unique about arena fighters? Like, or is it just kind of taking
from a tactics
3Ds to the
standpoint,
next level, so to speak?
Not quite. So like an arena fighter and something like Tekken, Soul Calibur, DOA are going to be very different. And it's hard to, the minute you see it, you recognize the differences. Like there's a lot of different value placed in different places in terms of offense. For instance, we talked about in the 3D fighter episode that fireballs aren't really, and projectiles aren't really emphasized in 3D fighting games. In arena fighters, they are the entire game. They are the most defining characteristic of offense.
Is it because the tracking is like you can't sidestep them, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, you can, but it's difficult. So you find yourself, because you can disengage from your enemy so freely, that fireballs and projectiles are used to maintain engagement across the arena. It's kind of like, instead of you walking up and pressing a button for a poke, you use your fireball as a poke, and then you can close distance and do a combo at certain ranges.
Okay.
A lot of them will have like an engagement mechanic where you kind of you spend a resource and you zip to the opponent upon hitting them or something like that.
Right. Okay. So I guess arena fighters, there wasn't a whole lot that we really wanted to cover on that. We wanted to cover the more popular titles, and the more popular, probably, is it the most popular style of fight game now, the platform fighters?
By numbers, yes, absolutely.
I mean,
Smash dominates in terms of numbers.
In my humble opinion, for the very little that I know, and this is probably a good way of stating it, is I find them more accessible for sure, because it's like,
yeah,
there's just something
the
about
floor is that's something that I think platform fighters do incredibly well, is that the accessibility is very easy to get a hold of, right? You have a button to do big attacks and a button to do small attacks, and then you throw people and you have a shield.
Yeah,
like
it's very
knock the other person off the platform. Right. There's,
before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's define a platform fighter.
Yeah, it's exactly how it sounds. You are fighting somebody on a platform, and there is a kill box surrounding the arena, and your job is to knock them into a kill box generally. There's a couple different ways that this gets facilitated. Usually it's through a percentage system. So you start at 0%, and then as you get hit, the percentage gets higher, and the amount of knockback that you take when you get hit goes up and up and up and up until you get into certain kill ranges, which is where a lot of the complexities in games like Smash Bros start to come in, because combos are percentage affected by percentage.
Right. Like, so to kind of put it in like a crunchy gamer term, I don't know if you know the specifics or not, but the knockback that you receive. So long story short, you throw a normal punch at me, and I get knocked back, let's say 10 frames, like, or 10 spaces, 10 meters, we'll say.
Yeah. 10 units.
10 units. Yeah, there we go. Now, if I'm at 100% damage, do I get knocked back 20, or is it multiplicative? Is it linear? Do you have any idea, or is it different for each
I
game?
I think it's different for each game. From what I've seen, I'm no platform fighter expert. It's also dependent on the move
Hmm.
and the state the opponent was when they were hit. So, like, I believe in Smash, uh, getting hit in the air when you hit somebody who's in the air, it has more of an effect. The knockback scaling is more at play than when you hit them on the ground.
Hmm.
Um,
And
I know I have no hard numbers for this, but when you and I played Multiverses a bunch,
yep, we played quite a bit of
WB's
multiverses. Yep.
uh, platform fighter offering, I felt like a lot of the combos, quote unquote, were very stable until you hit that special for the smash or the spike
Yeah,
or
the
the
charged
thing that
attacks
sends,
basically.
yeah, the thing that sends them flying was always the thing that did that. And your combos were relatively stable. You just got extensions based upon their percentage damage taken already,
Yeah.
which I
And
think is how Smash works, but I don't know for sure.
okay, let's talk a little bit about the archetypes in platform fighters. The ones that I typically play, that I'm aware of, I guess, is the sword archetype, the sword fighter,
Oh,
essentially,
infamous.
because
Infamous.
you get good reach with them. Usually they're fairly quick.
Mhm.
A lot of different things like that. There's also what are some of the other archetypes? Do you have
So you still
zoners
have,
and
yeah, you
shotos
still
and
have
stuff like that?
zoners. I don't know that I don't know that the term Shoto exists in platform fighters, just because like Mario is a Shoto, but I don't know if that's what the term is. He's just, I think it's just kind of a general all rounder.
So they
But I
might
know,
just call them
like,
Mario's or something,
probably not. They probably just don't call them anything.
right?
Um, but you do have kind of the representation of like puppet characters. Olimar from Smash comes to mind, where you have a resource of a character that you're controlling.
Hmm.
But for the most part, I think a lot of characters tend to be rather well rounded and are defined more by their weight than anything else. So, like,
Oh yeah, so like
Ganondorf is a heavy character, Bowser is a very heavy character, so they're hard to knock around and tend to hit really hard
yeah,
versus something like a
but they're
Kirby
slower
that's
and they don't
very light.
strike as quick.
Right, right. Versus something like a Kirby or a Jigglypuff that's very floaty and easy, quote unquote, to kill.
Yeah, and then a lot of those lighter characters have much better jump mechanics and recovery mechanics to get
Yep.
back on the platform. It seems like.
Right, right. They tend to have, especially the lighter you get, you tend to have access to better recovery because you are going to get pushed back so far because your weight doesn't hold you in. There's
Uh,
also the a mechanic that's called DI, and I think it stands for directional inputting. I think there was a little bit of it in multiverses, but it's a very big thing in Smash where inputting against the direction you're moving actually stalls out your momentum and can prevent you from dying.
Interesting.
So when you get hit, you mash in a direction, and your character will slow down progressively.
Okay.
Um, or there are ways like to escape combos with DI. So if you're being comboed and you're mashing one direction, your character will like inch in that direction, allow you to float out of the combo that your opponent is doing.
Out of their attack
And there are
range.
certain combos that have to be kind of teched that way, because Smash is crazy.
Yeah, Smash is I basically that's one of those games I just hit buttons in. I don't really know what I'm
Yeah,
doing
yeah.
when I play Smash.
I know a little bit, but just characters are so mobile that like my 2D fighting game brain doesn't work very well with it because they're able to just cross over me and things like that.
Yeah.
But
Let's talk
I
a little bit about about multiverses then, because I know we've
yeah,
played a fair amount of that.
yeah, that
Um,
was fun. That
I
was a
pl-
fun game.
yeah, it was a good time. I'd go back and play just about any time. But
I think it's down right now.
is it?
I know they were going to take it down and then do a proper release later, but there's been this whole WB merger and everything, so
Oh
who
right.
knows what later means.
Yeah.
But I hope they bring it back. I think it was a really well implemented game that had, I think, okay monetization strategies. That's always the fear with free to play.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
and I did find that the gameplay, it was probably one of the most accessible fighting games I've ever played.
Absolutely. The primary gameplay loop was a lot of fun, like really well polished, I
Mhm.
thought.
And then I like the idea that it's a 2v2 is like the
Hmm.
gold standard format.
Yeah, yeah, and then they had support archetypes built around that idea, which I
Hmm.
thought was really forward thinking. That's actually something that I feel like Smash kind of lacks, right? Because its primary game mode is a free for all,
Yes.
and then the competitive community has made it into a 1v1 and 2v2, but no individual character is really designed to support. Whereas in multiverses, you had characters like
Rain
what was the
Dog,
dog's name? Rain Dog.
and then
That's
Velma.
what they did. Velma, yeah, I mean
Yeah.
that's what they did is provide support.
And then there was also
Uh,
mages, I think, were the other type.
yeah, they were
And
kind of like
they were like
zoners,
zoners, yeah.
basically.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
usually had a lot of range attacks,
or
good
like
poke.
produced an item of some
Oh,
kind. Yeah.
yes, items. That's another thing to talk about that's huge in
Oh.
platformers is the items.
I don't even think about it because in all the competitive versions, all the items are off.
Yeah. But usually it plays a pretty big factor in like your casual games and stuff like that.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, in Smash
Yeah,
Bros, you get the super scope. You're basically nuking people. So
or the hammer.
yeah, the hammer. Yeah.
Yeah, I
So
mean, it's interesting because while Nintendo somewhat embraces the competitive nature and the competitive community of Smash, it's very hot and cold. Like they would much prefer that there is not this community of hardcore players for the game that they desperately want to be a party game.
right, right.
But the Smash community is crazy. The skill floor for being competitive at Smash is one of the highest of any games.
Really?
Like, in order to be competitive, you have to be so good at that game.
Huh.
Well, like there's like 52 characters,
Oh, I
and they're all
suppose.
different, and you
Yeah.
got to know how to fight all of them.
Yeah,
And you
it's a
got to a lot of
knowledge
there
check
are
the whole way
there are
through.
not only weight specific combos, there are character specific and spacing specific combos and percentage based combos.
That's crazy.
So like on top of the input system being very precise, so you have a large degree of control over your character, and tiny little differences in motions make a huge difference. I mean, watch a melee round sometime where they do what's called wave dashing, which basically what they're doing is they're doing a, if I'm remembering this correctly, they're doing a jump, and as close as they can to the ground, they are dodging into the ground, which makes them recover instantly, and they do that repeatedly. So they that makes them move across the stage and generate momentum at a rate that the game was really not designed to do.
Okay.
So you can just kind of skitter across platforms, and one of the best characters at doing that is Fox. So Fox is like the best character because he has a huge amount of momentum, access to like crazy specials. It's nuts, but like you more than any other fighting game, you hear about people getting carpal tunnel from Smash.
Okay.
Just the actions per second is off the charts.
Yeah.
They're nuts.
So yeah, I think that covers a good amount of the platform and touches a little bit on the arena fighters. We're not going too dense in this episode because again, we're not. I'm not super well versed in platform, and I this is maybe the second time I've ever heard the term arena fighters. So,
Yeah, I'm sure you've seen an arena fighter before. It's just they're not around very much, just because it's hard to. You have to get 4 people together or 2 people together on 2 different consoles. It's just hard to facilitate in a competitive environment.
Okay. So yeah, that'll cover it for this week, or this episode, I should say. And next fight game episode, we will talk about the fight game community and some of the big tournaments.
Yeah, FGC.
Yeah, and we'll see you guys next time.